it's Mrs. Terpstra, and this is our first lecture. It's going to be on instruments of the kitchen. We're going to start off right away with instruments that we use to measure. When you need small amounts of ingredients and you need to measure them, usually they ask you to use measuring spoons. And the 4 measuring spoons you'll need for this class are 1 tablespoon, that's the biggest one, 1 teaspoon, 1/2 teaspoon, and 1/4 teaspoon. Those are the 4 that I have in my kitchen. If you find a set with 1/8 of a teaspoon, that's even cooler. Then we have, for bigger amounts of ingredients, we've got measuring cups. And this red one I know is a mistake. We've got 1 cup, 1/2 cup, which is 2 of the 1/2 cups will fit in a whole cup. Then we've got 1/3 of a cup and 1/4 cup. Just FYI, all these measurements of measuring spoons are usually found written on the handle. And I don't know if you can see this here. I'm going to try to get it so you can see it. Oh, please. Will you? No, not really. Anyway, it said 1/4 cup. All of the measurements should be written on your measuring cups, and then you can double check when you're cooking to make sure that you have the right one. Next, this is also a measuring cup, but the difference between the two is that these are for dry ingredients, and this one is for wet ingredients. And you can tell the difference because the wet ingredient one has a handle and a spout for pouring the ingredients. So if the ingredients can be poured, you'll use this. And if they can't, if they're more pasty or dry or powdery, you use these. We're all familiar with this, right? Potato masher, mashed potatoes. Okay? I hope you all know that. Same with this, pizza cutter, very sharp, but you can roll it over a pizza and cut it. This is called a turner, and in cooking we use these a lot. I use these when I make eggs, I use them when I make like cookies and baked stuff too. But they're very good for like flipping items, for tossing items around, especially if you're not quite so good at the tossing movement that chefs do. If you need to move things around in the pan, these are really good because they're heat resistant. Just be aware though that when you're working in the kitchen and you're working at the stovetop, turners are heat resistant on the top, but not so heat resistant on the handles. And I don't know if you can see this, but somebody put, can you see that there? Somebody put this leaning against a hot pan and it burned or melted a little rift into the turner. So just be aware when you're at home. Don't let things lay on your pans because it might end up melting them. The next one is a whisk. This is called a wire whisk. Whisks are used for aerating things and for whipping things up. Next, this is called a slotted spoon. This is for when you are trying to cook things and you want some sauce to fall through. So the slotted nature of it is referring to these holes right here. That's what the word slotted means. And but it's still just a spoon. I mean, I could still use this to stir and it would be fine, but the holes in it is called slotted. It's a slotted spoon. Now, when you are using spoons in the kitchen, if you're stirring something very thick, like a dough or a batter, you might have problems with plastic because it's flimsy. It's not so flimsy. I mean, it should be firm. It should be sturdy, but still it bends. It's bendy. When I'm cooking, typically I will use like a metal spoon instead, just because I find it cleaner, it's easier to use, and it doesn't bend as easily. If you need something to be really firm, or if you need to be able to rest it on a pot somewhere, you can use a wooden spoon. Wooden spoons are good for like sauces, tomato sauce, I always use a wooden spoon. This is called a skillet. They come in a whole bunch of sizes, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch. This one I think is a really small one, like it could be even, I don't think it's a 6, I think it's an 8. But anyway, this is a skillet. This is a saute pan. It's got higher sides. Do you see the difference between these? I don't know if you can see in my video here how this one right here has sloped sides, whereas the saute pan has more upright sides. This is called a saucepan, otherwise known as a pot. I often just call these pots because saucepan doesn't come naturally to me to say, but it is a saucepan. You can have smaller ones and larger ones. Bigger pots would look like this. Sometimes they have 2 handles. This one is one that I use for pasta because it's a lot larger and you don't have to bend the pasta to get it to, or break the pasta to get it to be in the water. I don't know if you can tell by the reflection of this. This pan is very scratched, and the reason it's very scratched is because it had a nonstick surface on it. It still does have a fairly good nonstick surface, but it's not great. The black surface is called Teflon, and Teflon is a material that they coat cookware with to prevent it from sticking to the items that you're cooking with. Teflon can be scratched though, and the thing that scratches it is metal. If I used this spoon to stir on my Teflon, it would scratch it. If I used this whisk to stir, it would scratch it. If I used this turner, which is plastic, it won't scratch it. So it's good to use plastic, or you could also use wood. You could use a wooden spoon too if you want to stir things, and that will not scratch Teflon, but metal will. Even these tongs, you know, they're metal, so they could scratch it too. And as much as we remind people in classes not to do that, they still scratch them. And what happens is your pan gets so scratched that it's no longer nonstick, and you need to throw the pan away and get another one. So it really does help your pans and your saucepans and your pots and things if you don't use metal utensils, if they've got this black coating. Next, we've got tongs. Tongs have often a metal thing to keep them together. They're very good for flipping items. If you've got kebabs or chicken breasts or tortillas or anything that you need to flip, they're good for manipulating items on hot surfaces. This is called a sifter. We will rarely use this in this class. We use it for baking more than we use it for cooking, but still, if you have something that's lumpy and you need to take the lumps out, you can use it as a sieve or a sifter. And for example, when I make custard or like vanilla pudding and it has lumps in it sometimes, like I make a mistake and it's got lumps, if I need to take those lumps out, I can just pour it through this thing and kind of press the liquid through but leave the lumps in there so that I can toss those, and then I have smooth pudding instead. So that's what this is for. It's called a sieve or a sifter. This is a chef's knife. It's got a long blade that is dull on one side and sharp on the other side, as most knives are. Chef knives are fairly long. They can be 8 inches or 10 inches. I think they make them bigger than that. But anyway, this like shark fin shape is really indicative of a chef knife. And that is a multi-purpose, multi-use knife that people use in the kitchen for all manner of things. Sometimes your recipes will ask you to use a mixing bowl. And I just wanted you to see that a mixing bowl is different from a regular bowl. Regular bowls have sloped sides that are kind of out on the side. Mixing bowls have very steep sides. Do you see how like almost they're up and down? They're almost completely up and down compared to this one that are more at angles. And the reason this is good for mixing is because if you are, let's say, whisking egg whites and you've got the egg whites in here, you can really, really, really use a lot of elbow grease and effort to whisk those without the egg whites flying everywhere. Whereas if you're using this bowl, it's got the sloped sides, so ingredients are more likely to slosh out of it. So this one helps contain the ingredients. The mixing bowl helps contain the ingredients, whereas a regular bowl doesn't. Sometimes you'll see us use a mixer. If you have one in the kitchen, that would be great if you could use it. If not, that's okay. You can definitely survive in the kitchen without some fancy schmancy mixer. If you have a hand mixer, that works well. Otherwise, just be prepared and get your arm muscles working, because really you don't need a mixer. Still, I will use one in this class just because I think it does an even job, it does a fine job, and I like using mixers myself. This is called a rubber spatula or a rubber bowl scraper. And it is curved on one side to help you reach into the corners of bowls. The spatulas, Be careful because some of them can melt when you're cooking with them. So just like if you're going to expose them to heat, make it very brief unless you're sure that your spatula can handle more heat. Okay? But that's a spatula. And this is called a ladle. It is for scooping sauces out. It's kind of a weird shaped spoon that has like a bowl at the bottom of it, and that is for holding soup and things like that. I think that's all the tools we have for now. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.